I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker today. Professor Juliet Brodie comes to us with impressive credentials. Professor of Law at Stanford Law School, Director of the Stanford Community Law Clinic, Faculty Director of the Haas Center for Public Service. But Juliet is no ivory tower academic. She leads her law students into the trenches of eviction defense practice. She's on the Teams chat with our housing attorneys, seeking cases that will both give her law students great experience and also level the playing field for tenants who would otherwise be on their own, facing landlords who always have an attorney by their side. Juliet takes that firsthand knowledge of the community's problems that they face every day, and she uses the world-class resources of Stanford University to address those problems. She recently published a research study on evictions in San Mateo County in 2019 and 2023. You might have expected that evictions would have returned to pre-pandemic rates in 2023, looking back at 2019. As it turns out, her research showed that evictions in 2023 were 35% higher than in 2019. Just think about that for a minute. And Juliet's work goes beyond identifying problems to coming up with ways to address them. She recently published a report with Stanford's Law and Policy Lab on a possible approach to preventing evictions by allowing tenants to redeem the tenancy through paying their rent, getting caught up on rent. And that work informed proposed legislation that would give California renters more time to catch up on rent before facing eviction. Professor Brodie has it all: academic chops, hands-on experience, and a problem-solving approach. But more than any of that, in my mind, she's funny and she is a genuine pleasure to work with. We are fortunate to have her as our colleague. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Professor Juliet.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Well, as a clinical professor at Stanford, I spend most of my day making things up and talking, I'll say in this company off the top of my head. But for this event, I wanted to prepare some remarks, so please forgive me that I will be looking down and reading some remarks. Thank you so much, Stacy. Remarks that I should say will echo the theme that Assad set us up with, which are so obvious as we gather today. Let me start by just saying thank you so much, Stacy, for inviting me here. Thank you to the Luncheon Committee for honoring me with the opportunity to address you today. It's really my joy. The Legal Aid Society of San Mateo County is such an important institution in this crazy region we call home. And I'm so grateful to everyone in this room for supporting it and carrying out its mission to provide legal services, information, representation, and advocacy to the most vulnerable in our communities. In my clinical work at Stanford, as Stacy mentioned, I've been blessed by a decades-long partnership with Legal Aid, and my students, and more importantly, our clients, are standing with me at this podium to say thank you to everyone here for your part in helping this organization thrive. And of course, our beloved departed mother dragon, Shirley Gibson, is also standing here with me, and I know she is in all of our hearts today. So I don't want to start off on a partisan political note, but if you're like me, you're pretty overwhelmed on a daily basis by actions in our name and with our money being taken by the federal government. If, like me, you went to school, maybe even law school, and learned about the separation of powers, judicial review, due process, and maybe even developed a sense of pride at being part of the world's longest functioning, however flawed, liberal democracy. If you're like me, then these times are pretty alarming. Just a taste of the things in the recent news that lawyers and those who care about the rule of law are having to contend with. Threats to suspend habeas corpus, accepting gifts from foreign governments in exchange for who knows what promises, pardons to people convicted of violent crime, arresting judges and mayors, graduate students being picked off the street by masked armed officers, and the rendition of detainees to offshore gulags without due process. And this isn't even getting into the policy disasters that are happening, slashing Medicaid, housing assistance, and support for public schools, slashing research budgets, firing the head of the Library of Congress, depriving states of FEMA assistance, and ceasing collection of public health data that helps keep us all safe. So with so much very dangerous and upsetting news every day, and so much of it way beyond our control, how are we to proceed? What are we to do when events so much bigger than ourselves are coming at us out of a fire hose? Well, I have the answer. At least the answer for me: help someone. I can't stop climate change. I can't free Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I can't prevent the work requirements for Medicaid. But I can represent Richard Johnson. And of course, I'm using a pseudonym here, but a 63-year-old disabled man living on part-time wages in Redwood City, whose landlord is trying to evict him because he's 2 months behind in rent. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a minute. So as you heard, I direct the community law clinic at Stanford. Let me ask, how many of you here are lawyers? A lot. And how many of you did a clinic in law school? Okay, so you know, for the rest of you, we'll tell you that law school clinics are like residencies in med school for law students. They're the living classrooms where we, the clinical professors, teach the students by supervising them in real cases, in real courts, with real clients. That's real tenants, real landlords, real judges, and real opposing counsel. It's kind of a dream job. I get to do work that is immensely personally satisfying to me and aligned with my values, and to do that work in the context of teaching incredibly brilliant and motivated students. I get to teach them in the great apprenticeship tradition of our profession how to turn their new and somewhat shaky classroom knowledge, we were just discussing this, into actual skills and work for clients. They may be able to answer an exam question about summary judgment, but believe me, they have no idea what summary judgment is until they have to file one by Monday in San Mateo County Superior Court. And seeing the lights go on and behind their eyes as they connect the dots and realize that they have actual skills and can do something meaningful and real for a client is a never-fading joy. So in my clinic, we do different kinds of cases. You've heard about the eviction cases. We also represent people who have applied for and been denied SSI, the subsistence income program for people so disabled they cannot work in any job in the national economy. You would not believe how hard they have to fight for those benefits. And we also represent people whose criminal records are eligible for reduction or expungement so that they can re-enter society more able to work and rent. All of our work is in the direct services mode. We represent individuals on individual cases that have enormous impact on the lives of the listeners. So back to Mr. Johnson. One of the reasons he was behind in rent is that he had decided, after months and months of complaining about catastrophically bad conditions in his apartment, which his landlord had ignored, often with insulting and racist commentary, to pay only half of his rent. Interesting strategy. Intuitively correct, but unsurprisingly, the landlord didn't see it that way and began an eviction case against him. What that looks like, of course, if you're Mr. Johnson, is having someone hand you a stack of very scary papers with legal court stamps on them, dense language that is impossible to understand if you're a layperson. So where did Mr. Johnson go when he got served with that packet? He went to the Legal Aid Society of San Mateo County. And the amazing housing team, please raise your hands, amazing housing team. Here they are. Under David Lewis's leadership, we're ready to talk to him, ask him all the questions necessary to figure out his situation, most importantly, his deadline to respond to that scary packet, and to make sure he did not face this terrifying situation alone. Because this happened to Mr. Johnson at the right time of the year, when I happened to have students available to take cases, he agreed to be referred to our clinic. And just yesterday, a pair of 2Ls under my supervision who are representing him, negotiated an agreement where he has agreed to move out of his apartment in exchange for forgiveness of all the rent that he allegedly owed, some $8,000, and a payment of $10,000 to compensate him for the years he has been living in these illegal and uninhabitable and unconscionable conditions. It's not safe having habeas corpus, but it's not nothing. It means everything to him. It means the ability to move out of this dreadful apartment and set up in a new place with a modicum of dignity and self-determination. And this is the kind of work that the lawyers and staff of the Legal Aid Society do every single day, every single week, month, and year. We at the clinic are just a tiny little piece of it. For a few months out of the year, we're able to represent a small handful of cases, but they are there every single day, every season, taking calls, providing legal information, and not just in eviction, but in other areas. And maybe the folks in the room who work in some of these other areas will also raise their hands. Legal Aid works in healthcare. Where's our healthcare team? There they are. Disability Aid. The immigration team, an incredibly taxing and stressful job right now, working on immigration, answering questions. What do I do if ICE comes to my door? Benefits team that works with those SSI folks, but also with the people whose food stamps have been cut, people who are threatened with these Medicaid work requirements and have questions, our domestic violence team, and more. It goes on and on. In each of these areas, the lawyers, the legal aid lawyers at San Mateo County, and really throughout the state and throughout the nation, are representing and working with our society's most vulnerable individuals in the domains of most acute need. Hear me, legal aid work is survival work. It's a roof over your family's head, it's your physical safety, your basic income, your ability to live and work in peace against threats and forces beyond your control. And I do think it is important, at occasions like this especially, to really dwell on what this work requires. Every single one of those cases involves meeting with very vulnerable people. People who by definition are low income, disproportionately of color, language minorities and or disabled. It's meeting with them and hearing their stories. It requires explaining often inscrutable legal institutions and rules to them. It requires researching those inscrutable rules. Often it involves giving them bad news, two bad choices, no choice at all. Sometimes, as with Mr. Johnson, we get to give them some good news. Legal aid lawyers don't do this work alone. They work in partnership with food banks and health clinics and core service agencies, and with law firms and foundations and companies that support their work with their time and their treasure. We are all in this together. Now, before I close, I want to talk a little bit about the San Mateo County part of the organization we are here to celebrate. The crazy region I mentioned a few minutes ago. We all know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to give you the Gini coefficients or statistics about inequality, social mobility, and poverty. We don't need those statistics. We live this. Just drive in the southern part of our county on Middlefield Road, a north-south thoroughfare that runs out of Palo Alto, across the creek into San Mateo County. It goes through Atherton into Redwood City, the county seat. Making that drive, we see the vast and racialized income disparity from our cars as we make that turn from the leafy strips of mansions behind gates into the commercial strip of unincorporated North Fair Oaks. And this is but one pocket of poverty in our county. Drive also among the farm and hotel workers on the coast, the dense apartment neighborhoods of Daly City, and the still there renters in gentrifying East Palo Alto. In a nation with staggering and growing wealth disparity and income inequality, we live in one of its starkest visions. These are legal aid's clients. This is the environment in which legal aid does its work. And while many of us are struggling with new and formerly unimaginable horrors in our legal environment, arresting people for their op-eds, kidnapping mothers from their children, the list goes on, let's not forget that for many in our community, those horrors may not even be visible. Why not? Those horrors may be eclipsed by the daily personal struggles to get and keep work at sustainable wages, to get basic health care, to access safety net benefits, to be safe in one's home. These are the daily concerns of the folks in the communities that legal aid serves, and we must not let the scale of our current emergency obscure them. And that is why we are here today. We do not have nearly enough legal aid lawyers in this country. We know that a teeny percentage of working people's legal needs are met. And while we should be doing everything we can to grow legal services, we must also support and celebrate the ones we already have. That's why we're here today. So my students asked me two things. Well, they asked me a lot of things. Like, can he do that? But they asked two things that are related to my theme here today. They asked me, what can we do in this terrible moment? And they asked me, how can you keep doing this work after all these years? Which, of course, is a polite way of them observing how old I am. But my answer to both of these questions is the same. In this moment, in this world, using the legal tools that have been entrusted to me to help one person at a time is one thing I know I can do. What I mean by that is, for me, direct services, helping Mr. Johnson, is deeply satisfying to me in a context where so much injustice feels utterly beyond my reach. It doesn't mean that I don't revere the lawyers who are suiting up for the biggest, most impactful litigation that are imperative to protect our most basic freedoms. But for me, a way to feel useful, to both ward off despair and indeed find some joy, is to use my training to explain to a person what they are facing and what realistically I can do to help, and then to do it. We have a lot to be proud of as lawyers in this moment. Indeed, courts do seem to be playing their role in holding the line against excessive executive instincts and appetites. We'll see about birthright citizenship, today's argument. They are doing so, of course, based on arguments that attorneys are making in the courts before them. And I am immensely proud of those lawyers and those institutions, and to be in professional community and solidarity with them. I think we all should be. But we must also see and not forget the connection between those lawyers in the news and the legal aid lawyers in the trenches. We are in the fight of our lives to uphold the rule of law, to make meaningful and enduring law in our society. And let's be very clear, the lawyers and staff at the Legal Aid Society are a huge part of that very fight. We can have all the premium federal impact lawyers in the world, and God knows we need them. But we also need legal aid in our communities. To make law real, we need legal aid lawyers as well. I am so proud to be one of them, albeit a very lucky and a very supportive one. I never want to compare my daily life with the folks in the trenches here, but I am even prouder to be a partner with the folks we are here to celebrate today. Join me again in thanking them for their work.